Good morning, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Good morning, Paul. We are live. And we just started. Good timing. Good morning, everyone. As I said, it is Thursday, and we are here as we are every day to bring you the Gen AI news and let you know whether it is essential, important, or optional to tune into. We've got a list of, I believe, about 6 articles today. We've got another model released, this time by Mistral. We have some information from OpenAI on how they are doing things a little more automated fashion when they're aligning their model. Some info on Airtable's Gen AI 2 tools and a little bit more. So let us get started. Akash.
Yes, thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today comes from Mistral. Mistral has launched one of their large models. They are naming it Mistral Large 2, and they are claiming that it is more capable in code generation, mathematics, and reasoning.
All right. What do you think about this release, Tim?
Well, I think it's important, if not essential. We've had 2 major releases of state-of-the-art, SOTA, as they like to call it, state-of-the-art models that are open source. And this one, maybe it's hard to say, the day they're released, what's going to be more important. I mean, Meta's an enormous company with enormous resources. And so they're going to make hay with the 403 model they just released yesterday. But Mistral has a lot of money and is, the OpenAI of Europe, it's called. Although that's kind of a misnomer since they're open source for the most part. And this model is a third the size and much cheaper to run than the Llama model released yesterday. So the leapfrogging is intense right now. They also put a lot of effort into, they claim, again, we'll see how it turns out, but the benchmarks are good, to have significantly reduced hallucinations, which is a big deal for a lot of people using these models. So this is a big deal, in my opinion, and you certainly want to be aware of it at the very least.
Yeah, I would say, to call this on par with Llama 3.1, I think would be an overstatement, though, right? This is not a state-of-the-art model. It's an improvement over some of the models.
It's a percentage or 2 on every major benchmark. It's unclear. So here's the thing about benchmarks. We've all said they're kind of crappy anyway. And the real question is, what's the qualitative difference? Like if you're 75 and somebody else is 80, in practice, as opposed to in theory, does that make one bit of difference? And we don't really know the answer to that.
Tim, look at the benchmarks. If you scroll up, they're being a little deceptive here. If you go up, Ankash, to the first set of charts, the bar charts, it's down. Okay, so they are competitive on the first 2, and the last 2, they are actually third from last, but they have stuck their bar at the end of the chart to hide that. So
right,
I think
you're comparing them against the best closed source models in the world. And again, I don't know what these benchmarks mean. Is it so they're 80% and Claude is 90% on the third one over? Does that make a difference in practice? I don't know.
Right. Well, they're
So puts them in the ballpark, I would guess.
They're in the ballpark, but I don't think it's not looking like Llama level. I was impressed with one thing, and I would love to test it out and see how it works, which is that they said they trained it to let you know if it doesn't know the answer. So
right.
that's
an anti-hallucination, same thing. So training it to be more reliable, and also, as you said, to inform more when it's uninformed. So to be more informative of its uninformedness.
Yeah.
The other thing is that if you look at it, it does very well on different languages, and I think that's huge. A combination of open source and multi-language, because Arabic's the third in the world. Hindi's huge. So English. Mandarin English, Hindi. Arabic, Hindi. That's a lot of the world right there. Spanish. I'd give it an essential. What the heck? It's neck and neck with the big models, it's a third the size. I don't know if cost of execution is linear in size. That is, does it cost a third as much?
It's related, and they claim it's cheaper. Again,
It's
all
got
of
to
this theory, you have to really get some data before you understand the practice.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure a lot of
it's impressive enough to be worthy of attention.
All right. I vote for essential. There you go, Tim. You got me off important. And the I to the E.
All right. With reticence, only because you guys gave it essential, I will give it, but I would have given it important personally.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
democracy, you're going to have a parliamentary, you're going to have a republic.
I don't know. Hey, look, 2 essentials. I'm not going to knock it down. We'll say essential.
All right. Woo-hoo, democracy lives. As long as I'm not in charge. Okay.
Yeah,
For at
what do
least
we?
another few months.
Okay, the next one comes from TechCrunch from Livin Colway, and he talks about model collapse. So there's a research paper which talks about how scientists are warning against letting AI eat its own tail.
Yeah, they've been warning about this. I'm cranky this morning. I'm sorry. I've had a really long work week, but yeah, they've been warning about this for the last year. So this seemed like not news to me. But what did you think, John?
Yeah, I thought with this paper, we could do optional. The actual academic paper underneath is very interesting about these models being like Ouroboros, right? The mythical creature that eats its own tail. I mean, there's a particular intuition here, and actually, Paul and I were talking about this the other day. Look, if you think about a symbol system, and these things are symbol systems, right? The large language models, they're what we're using here is a symbol system. Language, and then mathematics is a symbol system. So the idea that a symbol system that generates its own new quote unquote data will eventually hit a wall makes intuitive sense, right? Because there's only so much signal in that symbol system, and that symbol system has no input or no ability to generate new facts about the world and new. It depends on your epistemology, but new realities, if you will. I happen to weigh in with the Buddhists that reality is a phenomenon of contingent arising. I see something and then I have a human instance of seeing something. But that's new information, right? We have pictures and other humans and dynamics that continually add new information to that symbol system of language and culture and so forth. But the mathematical symbol system, when it takes a sample of that reality as perceived by humans, will run out of runway. It's just, that to me is intuitively obvious. Now, I think the good news is that people are, and it's important that they make this point, which they do it very sophisticated mathematically, which is kind of cool. But I think that people are getting caught in an echo chamber, not to kind of make a semantic pun on this whole thing, but in the way that they think about this, because look, with robots and cell phones and vast, new data, satellite data, and so forth, we're not going to run out of data. We're going to find new data mines. And people are thinking this whole thing about running out of data reminds me of peak oil. When I was a kid in the 70s, they said, "Oh my goodness, we're going to run out of oil." You know what? They kept finding more oil, and they're going to find more data, and we're going to create more data. And it's not going to be synthetic data. So I completely think this is important that people understand that a symbol system runs out of runway without fresh signal, but I would separate that out from improvement in models.
All right, we've gotten important. Any other thoughts?
Is it important, John? I thought you said optional.
Yeah, you convinced yourself to move it up.
Contingent horizon. Got lost in the contingent horizon.
This is the performance art. Do not mess with.
Well, I think I would say I'd be okay with important. It's kind of geeky, and actually I think it's a red herring to a great extent. That is, I think there's a big problem here, but the problem is that people have no sense of what these models are. So your points are all well taken. I mean, there's a simpler model. These are all representations, and representations by definition are compressions. They don't have all the original data. And the human brain is a huge compression as well, right? We don't have all the data in the universe. The difference is that, and we don't say that humans run out of data. That's just not, now we do sort of, if you think about it, because we say, well, there are no new ideas and yada yada. But we don't generally say humans are going to run out of data. And the reason is because humans are exquisitely tuned to get the data that they need appropriately, because they're embedded and all their senses are, tuned by billions of years of evolution to take certain kinds of data and ignore others. So the representation is about as good as it can be. And that makes a huge difference. The difference with large language models is, A, the representation is not that great. We don't even know how good it is. We don't even have a way to compare how good it is. They're not embodied in the world of the data in which they exist. They don't even know what the data is. And in fact, the real red herring to me is, who says the data that these were originally trained on is any good? It's horrifyingly bad and not at all cognizant or attuned to the output purpose of the model. So you could say it's the old dancing bear joke. Some people look at it and say, isn't that remarkable that the bear can dance? And other people look at it and say, that's the most awkward freaking dance I've ever seen in my life. And both are true. And that's sort of where we are, in my opinion. This is an awkward dancing model trained on crappy data from the internet that nobody's ever looked at and thought about, does the data coming in do anything to help the output that I actually want? And the answer is no. These things just worked, and we're not even sure exactly why. So anyway, I think all of this is to say, to a certain extent, we just don't understand. And I agree with John. We probably won't run out of runway nearly as fast as people think. And I'm not clear that the runway we're on has been all that good anyway. So I think there'll be massive improvements just by improving the input data that we're already using.
Yeah, I hear you. And you're channeling David Reed this morning. But look, this stochastic parrot says a lot of interesting stuff, right? If you want to go,
I'm not saying it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying exactly that, despite the fact that it wasn't particularly attuned well with good sensing of the input data, it did fantastically well, certainly well enough to be economically meaningful. And that's all most people care about.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is that's why I started off with the whole notion of contingent arising, that look, human beings and culture are constantly exploring new domains, and by their perception of it, adding to the coda of knowledge, or at least the coda of perception. And that's what I'm saying, is that we are going to start hooking up these models to new data flows, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Paul and I were having dinner with a senior executive at a healthcare insurer, and they're capturing the wave file when a human being's talking to their doctor, and they're starting to diagnose off the back of that. Well, that's going to be a whole new data flow. Voice, we haven't begun to tap voice. Voice is like the Permian Basin of data. It's like,
yep. Well, we're down the rabbit hole. I agree, and I think the biggest issue about this stuff is
on a platform of insight. You think we're down the rabbit hole, so there we go.
Yeah. Well, I think the one big issue that's correct is the amount of crud that's now being generated by AI is flooding the simple data sources. So if you just read the internet, you're reading mostly other generated content. Yes. And so there is going to be a need to figure out how to get the right content to train the models. But I don't think that's impossible.
We're going to end it on that thought. We're down the rabbit hole 13 minutes in. Okay, so it sounds important, though, from the discussion, even though John moved himself through his discussion. But we'll go important on to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from Stability AI, and it talks about how stability has entered a new Gen AI dimension with stable video 4D.
All right, Paul, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, 4D time dimension, I think it's interesting. It's a research paper. I couldn't find example of it live, so I have it as optional.
Optional.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've added time, and that could be really important if this works well for the entertainment industry. So they might want to pay a little more attention.
I mean, and the other interesting thing they also talk about how they're going to also auto-generate different angles for the same scene, which could be a real time saver.
Right. That's right. So gamers might be interested. So there's certain industries that could have more interest in this. There are, in theory, also platforms that already do this kind of stuff.
All right, but optional for everybody else. Okay, on to the next one.
The next one comes from Airtable. So Airtable has launched a tool which can generate an app just from a prompt.
All right, I doubled you up, Paul, because I know that we were just looking at our internal tools, and there was discussion over Airtable and another one. So.
Yeah, we've been using Airtable. The first project I've used it, so I've been aware of it for a while and slowly becoming a fan. This is optional. This is another software company has it LLM on the roadmap and coming out, but for AI later, this is optional.
I think it's kind of cool that I'm also optional, but I think it's kind of cool that when you think about the evolution of industrial work, there became these sets of things you did, like, hey, you're a carpenter, you need these tools. Hey, you're running a machine shop, you need these tools. You need a drill press, you need a bandsaw and all that other stuff. Airtable does that. They basically say, hey, you're a lawyer. Here's the tools you might need in terms of software creation and so forth. Hey, you're a graphic designer. Here's what it is. So I think it's kind of cool. We're getting back to our analogy, power tools for knowledge work, right? We're now starting to actually, be able to walk into that digital Home Depot and say, oh, okay, I'm in the drill aisle. I'm in the bandsaw.
Yeah,
all right.
Interesting enough. Yeah, but 4GL started in the 70s, so this idea of COBOL, right, non-programmer programming, has been around forever, and this is getting us closer.
Uppercase, lowercase, baby.
Yeah.
All right,
Yep.
We'll go optional on the Airtable. What's next?
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI, and it talks about improving model safety behavior with rule-based reward.
All right, this was interesting, but another one because they said they've been using it since GPT-4. What do you think, Tim?
Don't prejudice the reviewer. Only kidding.
Well, it hasn't worked yet, so.
Can we invent a new term maybe called safe washing? When companies that are in theory first and foremost promoting safety turn out to be actually promoting economic gain, and they turn to articles like this to safe wash their actual efforts. So see, we're actually doing stuff, even though our entire safety team was disbanded. We're doing stuff. It's really safe. So that was sort of the way I read this. It's interesting. As you said, they've been doing it for a while. Again, this is to the Ouroboros thing. This is one large language model checking the veracity and safety of another large language model to a certain extent. So lots of issues here. They claim it works well, but they don't demonstrate beyond that how they know that, other than they give a few anecdotal examples. And as scientists, we need anecdotal examples because there are anecdotal examples about everything.
Yeah, I also love how, this is obviously automating RLFH, which was
right.
being
Also an economic gain here.
by
right?
humans. Yeah, so A, it's costing them less money, but B, when they talked about the advantages of it, they didn't talk about the fact that they'll no longer be paying, people in the Philippines 1 cent per hour to do this work as they have been.
The question is that an improvement in is that another thing they should be bragging about? See, we're not screwing over those poor folks around the world anymore.
Yeah.
Interesting. In terms of term, Tim, in terms of term, I'm still happy with virtue signaling on this one. But yes, yeah, I agree. Optional. It's whatever. We're getting into 1984. George Orwell was genius. Okay.
All right, here we go. On to the last one. I felt cranky about this article too, I'll tell you.
Okay. So this one, while it's hosted on the Microsoft website, but it talks about how Colonial First is using Microsoft's Copilot to transform wealth management.
I mean, I know I might be tired because I've had a long week, but does this not just say like, hey, these guys have Copilot? I couldn't find anything more valuable from here. What do you think?
I agree. It's a puff piece, and they're doing all the standard stuff and they didn't report any metrics or significant gains. Again, a couple of anecdotal notes about people who've improved their individual productivity 90%. Great. But this is a Microsoft advertisement.
Yeah, I thought of Paul when I read this too, because
Not even a particularly good one, in my opinion.
yeah, Paul's been trying to find people that actually were cheerleaders for Copilot and having good experiences, and was struggling to find someone for a while. So I thought of that. John, any other thoughts?
Optional. You guys said it all.
Yeah.
I just got access to Copilot, so I'll be reporting on that.
No, good.
As we go along. I will tell you that, at least for me, I've had it for a week. I've used it this much, 0. Because you know what? If you need to write a 2-line email, it is not worth doing Copilot. And if you need to write, and I don't write many 5-page emails. So it's not, I don't know it well, so I'm being a little pejorative without much knowledge, but I'm just, the empirical evidence to date is not having much impact on me.
Yeah. Well, it's basically ChatGPT shoved into your Microsoft interface, which really actually.
Well, again, I think John's said this well many times, which is the first thing, and Alan sort of taught us this a long time ago. The first thing everybody does is recapitulate the old with the new. So I'm going to write better emails. I'm going to write better PowerPoints, but I haven't changed anything. I'm just better at what I used to do. And the problem that Microsoft has, I think, with these tools is they haven't made them better enough to move people off the dime. It has to be a lot better before you're going to stick your hands into a new tool and use it. It can't just be a little better. So the internet was a lot better than paper. And so people stuck their hands into it, even if it was just a magazine online. It's a lot better than a magazine on paper. It's a lot of advantage to it. But there's not that much advantage to, I can, write a 2-line email in twice the time and twice the money it takes me to do if I just use my old-fashioned email.
Yeah. All right. So Microsoft, we're not giving you much love today, but we've loved the strategy of their chief, but the product.
You're laughing all the way to the bank right now.
Exactly. All right, where do we land today? We've got the Mistral Large 2 launch as essential, the model collapse issue as important. Everything else was optional today, so a light reading day for our AI leaders. Any announcements, John,
Nope.
Tim? All right, we will sign out. See everybody on Friday. Yay, tomorrow. Have a good one.